Now, Jeffrey Brown is here with the author of our latest book club pick, and at the end of the conversation, what to read next month. Stick around for our latest selection with the New York Times. It's all part of Canvas, our ongoing series on art and culture.
It sounds perfectly ordinary, Conversations with Friends, but the novel by that name about two Dublin college students and their relationship with an older couple was an anything but ordinary debut for a young Irish writer named Sally Rooney. Conversations with Friends was our book club pick for September. Sally Rooney joins me now, and welcome to you. Thanks for being part of this.
Thank you for having me.
So in one way, this was a coming-of-age story, but set in a very particular time, place. Tell us what you were after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's right to describe it in one sense as a coming-of-age story. So, as you've said, it follows these two college students. It's told from the perspective of my narrator, Frances. And it's very much about her relationship with her ex-girlfriend, her best friend, Bobby. And it's also about their encounter with a married couple who, to these young women who are 21 in the course of the book, this couple seem much older, much more glamorous, much more sophisticated. In fact, they're quite young. They're only in their 30s. And so it's a book set in Dublin, sort of in the present day, and it follows the journey of those four characters and the sort of interrelationships that develop between them.
It's a love story, but it's also a kind of running commentary on social life that the characters are encountering. It's set very specifically in this post-economic crash, right?
Absolutely.
2008. So what ideas did you want to get across there?
So it wasn't necessarily that I was undertaking a project of social commentary as such, but I suppose what I was trying to do was observe the texture of the world that I myself was inhabiting. So even though all the characters are completely fictional and their exploits are very much figments of my imagination, the world that they live in was and is very similar to the world that I was living in as I wrote the book. And so in that sense, maybe it does accidentally provide some kind of commentary on the city of Dublin at that time, from one very limited, I should say, perspective.
And a number of our readers wanted to know about the particular characters. Where did they come from? Of course, they want to know, are they based on real people?
I feel if I knew the answer to that question myself, I would be able to write a novel sort of every month, because I never know where the ideas for my characters are going to come from. They do arrive to me what seems fully formed, sort of whole, even with the interrelationships between them kind of intact. And then my job as a novelist is, I feel, to follow the thread of where those relationships are going and to try and explore them on the page. But the characters really seem to walk into my brain, and they aren't based, certainly not consciously, on any one that I know or any fictional characters I've read about before. They're sort of just the whole thing, and they come to me as they are.
One reader, Mary O'Brien, she noted, as did others, the constant push and pull between the emotional life and the analytical, which we see constantly throughout the book. And no one can seem to escape the emotional life in the end, right? So she noted the characters saying, you can't always take the analytical position. Where does this push and pull come from?
I think certainly that the narrator that I conceived of for myself here, Frances, is somebody who's a little bit more comfortable on the analytical level than she is both experiencing her emotions and also inhabiting a sort of physical body. Those things don't come so easily to her, whereas the kind of intellectual life, she finds a little bit more comfortable. So I think for me, it was interesting to take her out of her comfort zone and force her to confront these parts of life that for her are a little bit messier and more difficult to deal with.
You know, much of the conversation between friends is by text, by email, all of them used extensively in the novel. Is that because that was just natural to you?
Yeah, I mean, partly because it was natural and partly I think because it was interesting. Like as a writer, I'm very drawn to text and words. And so uses of language always interest me. And I feel that the internet gives us new ways of using language and has really embedded written language in our lives in a new way. So the fact that so many relationships are now conducted, almost primarily through the written word for a writer is sort of very juicy and interesting because I love the written word.
Yeah.
So I was, really interested in pursuing how it is that people build relationships using language alone.
Well, but it's also very interesting because, there's all kinds of discussion and talk about what our lives on screens are doing to us, interrelationships, communications with our friends and loved ones.
Sure.
Do you see it changing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think our lives have become more textual. We spend more and more time looking at screens, and most of what we look at on screens are words of one kind or another. So, of course, that shift into textuality is very compelling for me as a writer, because my whole working life is about text. But I suppose I feel that as a novelist, my job is to observe rather than to judge. So just to try and depict and to get into a granular level of detail about what it feels like to live out these kind of lives without sort of judging whether or not that's a good or bad thing.
All right, we'll continue our conversation online where you can find it later on. For now, let me say thank you, Sally Rooney.
Thank you so much for having me.
But before we go, I want to introduce our pick for October. It's a shift to a subject very much part of our political campaigns these days, as candidates, legislators, judges, and citizens assess and debate the political power of corporations, especially after the Citizens United case. The book is We the Corporations by law professor and author Adam Winkler. As always, we hope you'll read along and join us and other readers on our website and our Facebook page for Now Read This, our book club partnership with the New York Times.